Fico!
You're stabbing a person who is a victim in a country that's a victim of an aggression. What person in a right mind would do that?
Weeks of unrest in Slovakia have led to this moment. Mass protests are expected here in Bratislava, with protesters accusing Prime Minister Robert Fico of undermining democracy and taking Slovakia's direction towards Moscow. Slovakia is a landlocked country on Ukraine's western border with a population of about 5.4 million. Once a part of communist Czechoslovakia, Slovakia joined NATO and the EU in the early 2000s, but Russian influence has never fully disappeared. Over the years, pro-Kremlin narratives have spread through disinformation campaigns and domestic sympathizers, shaping political discourse. Prime Minister Robert Fico is seen by many as the face of this political shift.
Neužiť tieto stretnutia ľudí na vyvolanie konfliktu s bezpečnostnými zložkami Slovenskej republiky, na to, aby došlo k zásahu týchto zložiek a samozrejme potom na pokus zvrhnúť vládu Slovenskej republiky a v násilnom prostredí prevziať Slovenskej republike moc.
Fico claims these protests are part of an opposition-led coup attempt with foreign actors being involved, as mentioned by him personally. What's your response to that?
Well, to state the obvious that it's complete nonsense and it's not even new and original. I count the second attempt in the past 6 years by the Prime Minister, the same Prime Minister, to claim a coup d'etat. He did something very similar in 2018. I don't believe a word of what he says about the government's policy is to remain in the EU, because on a day-to-day basis, his actions and his rhetoric consistently and repeatedly prove the opposite.
This is a real attack on democracy in Slovakia. The real problem is that there are ties, connections from our government to Russia. Since our Prime Minister Robert Fico is traveling to Moscow to meet Vladimir Putin, since he is attacking Ukraine all the time, and he's attacking our allies in the European Union, I believe that it's very important to say that Slovakia is not only Prime Minister Fico. There are thousands of people who protest every second week.
Fico, leader of the Smer SD party, is serving his third term as Slovakia's Prime Minister, since first taking office at the beginning of the new millennium. He originally gained support through nationalistic rhetoric, strong welfare policies, and a tough stance on immigration. But returning to power in 2023, his recent mandate has been marked by a pro-Russian stance, halting military aid to Ukraine, opposing EU sanctions on Russia, and undermining pro-Western voices in Slovakia. Já bych se vás rád zeptal, proč jste dneska přišli na demonstraci tady v Bratislavě?
V prvom rade preto, aby Slovensko ostalo v Európe a význam Slovenska vidím zásadne na západ od Slovenska, nie na východ od Slovenska.
Prišiel som sem kvôli tomu, že nesúhlasím s vládou súčasnou a s tými krokmi, ktoré robí.
A vôbec sa mi nepáči, na ktorý smer ide.
Chceme pokoj, chceme slobodnú Európu, slobodné Slovensko.
A malo by sa to zlepšiť aj čo sa týka prezidenta, aj premiéra. Myslím si, že sa riešia absolútne nepodstatné veci, ako by sa mali riešiť na Slovensku.
All populists do, Mr. Fico is not actually campaigning for something, he's campaigning against something. He needs something that he can point at as detrimental, dangerous or bad for Slovakia. And now it's for better or for the worse, is President Zelensky. And what we say, what the opposition says is that's terribly unethical and terribly bad for Slovakia's security. Unethical in a sense that you're stabbing a person who is a victim in a country that's a victim of an aggression. What person in a right mind would do that? That you round on and you gang up on the victim rather than the aggressor. It is simply inhuman.
Since the very beginning of his government, fourth government he's running, he started to attack media and independent journalists. He calls us to be enemies So we are not critical media, or I don't know what, we are enemies to his state and to his government.
Recently, Fico's popularity has declined, with polls showing a significant drop from 24% his party received in the 2023 elections to around 18% in a poll conducted in January 2025. A meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, his open hostility towards Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and controversial policies, such as tax hikes, are among the many reasons Slovaks have been repeatedly taking to the streets. Meanwhile, Fico claims that these protesters are preparing a coup against him, further escalating tensions. Tens of thousands of Slovakians have gathered here behind me on the Square of Freedom in the middle of Bratislava.
Prišiel som podporiť ukrajinský národ a ľud a mier na Ukrajine, lebo Fico je konšpirant, lhář, klamár, a ktorý vlastne nechce mier na Ukrajine, ale chce, aby aj Putin vrah vyhral. Preto som tu s ukrajinskou vlajkou.
Organizačné pokyny.
Chceme vám povedať, že Abelová, Novohrad, celý vidiek je s vami.
Vyzývame premiéra Roberta Fica, aby dodržiaval zákony. Žiadame vládu a najvyšších činiteľov štátu, aby odmietli akúkoľvek spoluprácu s Ruskom, ktoré vedie vojnu proti Ukrajine.
Je nás tu 42 až 45 tisíc.
With the protests growing, what's the opposition strategy to counter Fico's government? Can this demonstration actually force some political change, in your opinion, if you could say shortly?
Well, they serve the purpose of mobilizing people. Again, we're not organizing the protest. This is a conglomerate or coalition of civic societies and civic leaders. But it does serve the purpose of mobilizing people and keeping them politically active, which is important because the alternative is sadly a lot of people leave Slovakia. Those who are on the side of the opposition tend to be people who are with means, who are relatively mobile, who can find employment elsewhere, who are not necessarily bound to Slovakia. And many of them choose to leave rather than deal with the incompetencies and the insanities of the Fico government.
Žiadame predsedu vlády Slovenskej republiky Roberta Fica, aby sa vzdal svojho mandátu a v záujme budúcnosti našej krajiny odstúpil.
Slovakia's shift mirrors a wider trend of rising populism in the region. Like his ally, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Fico has echoed pro-Russian rhetoric while distancing Slovakia from Ukraine and undermining EU's unity at the time of Russia's hybrid attacks. This is all a part of a broader Russian strategy, fueling division within the EU and NATO. If Slovakia moves further away from Western unity, it could weaken European support for Ukraine and embolden other pro-Kremlin leaders across the continent.
Thank you for watching this video. There's something important I want to tell you. Of course, 2025 is looking like it could be a very big and very crazy year for Ukraine, but we are not going to stop bringing you the reality of what's going on here. We've got a lot of content coming your way in the timeline in the next 2 weeks, including from my recent trip to the front line and my colleagues' coverage of the Munich Security Conference this weekend. If you don't want to miss it, it's very important that you subscribe to the Kyiv Independent YouTube channel. Thank you.